What's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of Go Talk with Marcus, presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. It's been a couple weeks. The last time you guys saw us, it was the week before All-Star Weekend in the WNBA, and there's a lot to talk about. Wade County has moved from Miami, Florida, to the great city of Chicago. Rhyne Howard, the Atlanta Dream, has shattered a record. And Martin and I have a very, very special announcement to make at the end of the show, so stick around for that. There's so much to talk about. Trade deadline is coming up. There's some super team bias, and we're going to give out some flowers to who we think the most improved player has been so far this season. Stay tuned for all that and so much more next on Go Talk with Marcus.
Give them a shot to do what?
What's up, man? Always good to
How
be
you
here.
going?
Good to be back.
It's been a minute. Well, it hasn't been a minute since we've talked. We've talked almost every day for the last 3 weeks. It's been a minute since we've talked in front of a camera, though. And there's a lot to talk about. And I think there's no better way to kind of set the tone for kind of what's happening later on tonight in the show than to talk about probably the biggest investment or the latest major investment we've seen made in the world of women's basketball, specifically in the WNBA. Miami Heat legend and soon-to-be Pro Basketball Hall of Famer Dwyane Wade has decided to join the ownership group for the Chicago Sky. So lucky for the Sky, they lose one Wade a couple weeks ago, and they get another one back in just a couple weeks' time. What was your reaction to Dwyane Wade joining this group, and what do you think this means for the Sky, but also like for the WNBA moving forward?
It's just really dope to see someone of Dwyane Wade's caliber. He's been dabbling into ownership. He has partial ownership with the Utah Jazz, if I'm not mistaken. But it's really dope to see a high-level player and businessman and someone of his basketball credibility tap into ownership in the WNBA. I think that all of us who advocate for women's basketball strongly would want this to become a trend and want to see Wade become like a pioneer for others. Listen, I want to see LeBron, Chris Paul, Carmelo, Giannis, Ja Morant. I mean, any of these guys who are tapped into the WNBA. We want to see these guys tap in more, whether it's as owners or whatever the case. But the fact that it's Wade, it's Chicago, there's so much credibility there. We talked about it when I was on here last time with James Wade leaving. And I said, I'm like, there's a lot of upside there. Kalia Copper is there, someone who I think is going to be one of the best players in the league soon, if not already. But this is her year with Candace Parker gone and Sloot gone. You know, the team is down, but she's coming into her own personal identity as a real star. So and there's plenty of upside with the Chicago Sky as a franchise. So to see someone like Dwyane Wade get involved now is really dope to see. And I'll say this too, let's put to bed all of these idiots who replied to videos and on comments of NBA players supporting WNBA games, making these outlandish claims. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And I've seen I see a lot of dumb things on a day-to-day basis in the basketball world, Marcus. One of the dumbest things I see is fans implying that NBA players are paid to go to WNBA games. Have you ever seen that in comment? There are people on Twitter and on Instagram comments literally making jokes. Oh, I wonder how much he got paid. I wonder what his check was like. Do you really think these guys, first of all, need more money? Second of all, do you really think they need money to go watch some basketball, to go support women's basketball? That's how sad it is out here. But all that aside, I'm proud of D Wade, and I'm happy, and I'm hoping that this can become a trend.
100%. I think that the thing for me, the biggest takeaway was D Wade said, if you guys remember, the night before it was announced that he joined the ownership group, he was at the ESPYs with LeBron and CP3 and Carmelo and did that thing. And at the ESPYs, LeBron kind of said, shout out to Asia Wilson for winning the award that she won. Make sure y'all tap in. And what D-Wade said when he was kind of asked about why he joined the ownership group, he was like, it's one thing to say invest. It's one thing to show up to the games, like wear the hoodie. It's another thing to actually put your money where your mouth is and make the investment. And there were some people I saw that kind of thought that was a shot at LeBron. That wasn't a shot at LeBron at all, because I don't think it was. That's just D-Wade being honest. Like, there is, like, put your money where your mouth is. Like, some people walk the walk and some people talk the talk. And this is a perfect example of D-Wade walking the walk. Like, I can show up to all the games I want. And let's be honest, I think, me personally, I do think if it weren't for his passing, I think Kobe would have been the first one to do this, because we saw how invested he was in the WNBA, not just because of Gigi, but like the connections he had with Jewel Lloyd, the connection we had, of course, with Sabrina Ionescu. Like, he was at every game possible. Like, every chance he got, he was sitting front row at a game, and not just at games in LA because he's there, but like he was going to Atlanta and going to those games. He was in New York at those games. He was in Vegas. Like, he was all over the place. He was in Mystics games, and he, like, there's only 12 teams, but he made a point to show up and represent. So when I look at this from the Dwyane Wade perspective, number one, it has to feel good for him, of course, because if I'm not mistaken, he is from Chicago. And so that does feel good for him to want to, of course, invest in the WNBA team that represents where he's from. But like Dwyane Wade said, again, it's one thing to like say that you're investing. It's one thing to say go out there and support. It's another thing to put in the work and show, like, I'm not just saying this because it's cool. And I'm not just saying this just because, like, I'm not just an ally. Like, I'm actually here on the front lines, showing that I'm willing to support. And this is going to be the first piece in what I think, as you said, is going to be a major domino effect. We're going to see a lot of players start to do this as well. There's been a lot of rumblings about whether or not LeBron James is pretty much stamped already behind closed doors of being the owner of the Vegas team for expansion for the NBA.
Right.
I would have to imagine that if that's true and he does become the owner for that team, he's going to join the ownership group for the Las Vegas Aces. And it's not just because it's Vegas, but also because he's a part of Clutch Sports. And Asia Wilson is also part of Clutch Sports. And they have that connection. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see LeBron James join the Las Vegas Aces as an ownership stake. I wouldn't be surprised if he hasn't already, if we see Kevin Durant join one of these teams, specifically the Seattle Storm, because he's been super, super adamant about the NBA getting back to Seattle. Of course, when he was drafted back in, what was that, 2008, the Sonics were still a basketball team when he was drafted second overall in Seattle, and he wants to go back to Seattle. So I would imagine, I mean, he's investing in pickleball teams. Like he's investing, like, I would have to imagine that down the pipe, because of how much of an astute businessman that Kevin Durant is, he'll probably make an investment, most likely in the Seattle Storm. I'd have to think that some of these other, I wouldn't be surprised. I know he's not a basketball player. I wouldn't be surprised if we might see Darren Waller. He's married to Kelsey Plum. Maybe he takes a stab at it, joins one of these. Like, there's so many opportunities for not just players, but for celebrities also to join these groups. We know how much of a big Knicks fan Spike Lee is. Like, maybe Spike Lee joins the ownership group for the Liberty. It's not, I mean, it's technically Brooklyn, but it's New York, though. Like, and Spike Lee's a New York guy. So this Dwyane Wade thing is huge, not just because it's Dwyane Wade, but because it's going to be the first of what I think is going to be a massive domino effect of athletes, especially NBA players, joining ownership groups for the WNBA to further spread and also further bridge that gap between the NBA and the WNBA as well.
Yeah, we just need more basketball people in basketball positions as a whole. I'm glad you brought up the Kobe piece, because that's a really good point. Kobe probably would have been the first by now. And we know that Dwyane Wade was really close with Kobe. You know, they really had, you know, they were really close. And so I'm sure at some level there is some Kobe motivation behind it, and him feeling like he's kind of continuing the work and picking up the mantle there. Last thing I'll say too, it's really dope that Wade, it's almost like Chicago gets another, like, Chicago's such a Chicago city, meaning like people who are from there, they're always going to be legends. You know, when people are from Chicago, it's just, both of my sisters are from Chicago, so I'm pretty familiar with it. They lost Candace Parker, which was like a huge blow. You know, she wins a title there, and she left on her own accord. It was fun, you know, it wasn't like bad blood or anything, but losing Candace Parker as a basketball player is tough enough. She's from Chicago. That whole thing was, I mean, the whole storyline is just magnified by the fact that she's from Chicago. They lost her, but now that they're getting Wade in there, I feel like it's kind of it's like a weird kind of replacement. You lost one Chicago legend as a player. You're getting another Chicago legend in the ownership group. So I think that's really dope and really important too.
And here's something else too. When we talk about the domino effect, the conversation that have been happening a lot, especially because of this season, because of how many cuts we've seen and how frequently we've seen the cuts because of roster size and there only being 12 teams. When we start talking about expansion, when we start getting teams back in, and I would assume that at some point every team that used to be in the WNBA will be back as a part of expansion. We start talking about the Comets coming back. We start talking about the Sting coming back. We start talking about the Shock coming back, and like all of the. I would have to imagine that the players that play for the NBA associated city are also going to invest. Here's another name, and he's young, but he's got the connection already because his mom played in the league, and she's a coach right now for Notre Dame. I would expect Jaden Ivey at some point before his career is said and done to invest in a team. And if the Detroit Shock come back, I would expect Jaden Ivey to put in some sort of investment, whether it is to be the owner or to be a part of the ownership group there as well because of that connection. Like, as the WNBA continues to expand, because it's going to continue to expand, we will start to see more players, specifically players that are either from a specific city or that play for a city that already has that NBA team where the WNBA is coming back to invest as well. It helps, again, like I said, it helps bridge that gap and keep that connection. Like, it's not, the NBA is not better than the WNBA. That's not what's happening. And the WNBA is not better than the NBA. There's a lot of people that have like that tribalist belief. I believe, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you believe as well that they're on the same level. Like, these are these are the creme de la creme basketball players in the world, and for the men in the NBA and for the women in the WNBA. And as they continue to expand, just because there are men who are part owners in WNBA basketball teams that happen to be NBA basketball players doesn't take away the value of the WNBA or WNBA franchise because you've got a former or current NBA player investing. And if anything, that actually makes it better because it's like, if the NBA is willing to invest from a player standpoint, if players are willing to invest, both current and former, then what makes you better than them that you can invest? That you can't watch a game or go to a game or buy a hoodie or like sit down and actually enjoy the sport for what it is and not bash it for whatever reasons you want to bash it. Whether it's because you think, like you said earlier, players are paid to go to this game, which is a ludicrous thing to say, or whether it's because you think the rim should be lowered so it can be more excitement. Like, the WNBA is a great league, and Dwyane Wade investing in the WNBA is just another great example of the WNBA continuing to move forward in its progress.
Yeah, they've got a ways to go, but as we've been talking about, the college game and the bigger the names get, even at the college level, as they transition to the WNBA over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a massive wave of momentum coming towards the WNBA that they'll have to be ready for before they can get to expansion. But the Angel Reeses and the Paige Beckers and these girls, when they start to make their way to the league, it's only going to make it more popular and hopefully more enticing for some of these young stars coming up, some that you named, for them to tap in even more with the women's game. So it's gonna keep growing and expanding, like you said.
Really quickly, before we move on to the next subject, if you have not already, please make sure you drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the Give It a Shot Network for all things related to Go Talker Marcus, for all things related to JT and the Don and stuff about sports and the Divide. A lot of awesome things happening. And please stay tuned for the end of the show because there is a major announcement. Let's switch gears. We're going to stay in the Eastern Conference, but go down south just a bit. Rhyne Howard becomes the fastest player in WNBA history to hit 153 pointers. I believe she hit that mark at 57. Unfortunately for her, though, she did break her streak of 21 straight games of having at least 2 3-pointers. But Rhyne Howard's already left her mark on the WNBA history books. And at the pace she's going, she could probably set the all-time record for most 3-pointers made in a single career at the rate that she's going. When you look at Rhyne Howard specifically, we're going to talk about the Dream as a whole in just a second because they're in playoff contention. But when you look at Rhyne Howard specifically, what is it that you love? Like, what is it about her game that just gets you in? Because I know there's a lot of things about Howard that you like. We've talked about this. There's a lot of things about her that you love. What is the thing about Rhyne Howard that you love the most that you think separates her from the other second year and young players in the league right now?
It's really her shot creation ability at her size, the fact that she's 6'2" with her length and that she has such a command of the ball. Her first step is quick when it needs to be. She's not lightning fast or lightning quick. She's not even like super athletic like that. But she picks her spots. What I'm really seeing now and noticing is that her pace is really getting to another level just in her second year. When you watch Rhyne Howard right now and you remember that she's in her second year in the league, it's really crazy just the way that she's moving out there. But it for me, the main thing is just the versatility of her shot creation. She can go to 1-footers. She can hit threes off the dribble. That's one of the biggest things to me why she's gotten to that fastest to reach 150 threes. She's not even like a 3-point shooter. Like she's not a marksman. She's not a 3-point specialist. She's just an overall scorer. she can hit you from the mid-range. She can get to the basket, and she can knock down threes off the dribble. I mean, tough shots off the dribble too, from 3. So her ability and her versatility as a shot creator is the main thing I always notice when I'm watching her.
And I think for me, the one thing that I kind of think about with Rhyne Howard is because she's a big guard, she has the ability to rise up over the defenders and hit those shots at a much easier clip. The player that I think about a lot when I think about Rhyne Howard, because of the versatility, because of like she's not a marksman, but she can hit from anywhere because of the size she has. She reminds me a lot of KD in a way, because like KD's 7 feet tall at the 3 or 4 position and could even play the 2. And because of his size and because of his versatility, he's able to rise up over defenders and hit those shots clean like it's nothing without much trouble. And Rhyne Howard reminds me of that a lot. When you look at how she attacks, it's not just attacking to get to the basket, which of course she can do that, but it's attacking to break down the defender, whether that's shooting up in the mid-range, whether that's pulling up in the paint, whether that's a one-legged floater, whether that's hitting those off the dribble 3-pointers like you mentioned, or the spot up threes, or the catch and shoot. Like she can do it all. And we've talked a lot about how the WNBA historically has been a big girls game. When you think about the Lisa Leslies and the Cheryl Swoops and the Tamika Catchings of the world, when you think about the Candace Parkers of the world, when you think about the Asia Wilsons and the Brittany Griners and even potentially the Aaliyah Bostons of the world as we get down the stretch of her career, like that's what it's been. And Rhyne Howard is a big girl, but at the guard position, which makes her that much more versatile, which makes her that much more lethal, and which makes her that much more unstoppable. Like there's a reason why she was the rookie of the year last year. Like there's a reason why she had the rookie season that she had last season. It's not just because she was talented and gifted. It's because she's talented and gifted, but like nothing's stopping Rhyne Howard from getting to her spot. I've yet to see someone stop her from getting to where she wants to go. Like if she wants to go to the elbow and rise up over you with a midi, she's going to do it. If she wants to get on that low block and hit you with a fader, like she's going to do it. And until someone can stop her, which I don't think anyone can, it's going to be rough for opposing defenses, not just individually, but as a whole. And so that's the one thing I agree. That's one thing I love about her game so much is it's so versatile and it's virtually unstoppable. Like there's nothing you can do about it because there's not many guards in the league right now that are her size. And so if you're going to put somebody on her, you got to put one of your bigs on her. If you put one of your bigs on her, what does that do? That leaves you exposed defensively in the paint. And the Atlanta Dream are so good with moving the ball that they exploit that every chance they get whenever they notice that the defense is going to put a big girl on her. So she commands a lot of attention from players that don't play her position. That if you want to stop her, like you got to put Asia Wilson on her, or you're going to have to put Aaliyah Boston, or you're going to have to put someone big on her to get physical with her and give her some bump. But she doesn't run away from the physical. Right. She's unstoppable, and you have to love it.
Yeah, she's only going to figure things out more and get more dangerous. She had a 43-point game. I broke it down on my channel, all the highlights. That's her career high. She set a new career high of 43 in her second season. So just put that into perspective and understand that Rhyne Howard, she's only going to get better. She's going to figure things out more. She's going to become more unstoppable. So that's going to be the reality with Rhyne Howard. And you hit it right on the head. The most important thing. She's a big guard, and we're used to big. We're used to size in the W. We're used to versatile bigs and versatile size. Candace Parker, dual forward, right? One of the best passers ever. And she's 6'3", 6'4". Not even Candace Parker operates in terms of guard play the way that Rhyne Howard does. Rhyne Howard is a guard. She's not a forward. She's a hybrid guard. And so she's unique. She's totally unique in that way.
Yeah. Let's broaden the scope a bit now, and let's focus on the Dream as a whole, because we know Rhyne Howard's the best player, but this hasn't just been a one-woman show. Like we've seen a lot of support from this entire team, so much so that they're sitting now, if I'm not mistaken, last I checked, they're sitting 5th in the WNBA. They're a playoff team. They are a game over 500 at 13-11. They are just behind. They're half a game behind the Wings. They're half a game ahead of the Mystics. Like, unless things just completely fall apart down the stretch here in these last, what are we talking, 14 games of the season, we should expect the Dream to be in the postseason. So I guess my question is, can the dream, no pun intended, cause nightmares for opposing teams offensively or defensively come postseason time? Because you got to think they'll be there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Alicia Gray has been really good for them this year too. She was an all-star, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. She's been really good at the point of attack. She's another dynamic player that's really improved and done well this year for them. She gives them some extra like oomph offensively. I think they're going to be right there, man. I mean, I haven't watched them extensively enough to really like have a feel for their team, but I just know when you have a player like Rhyne Howard who can be that dominant and that special individually. Again, they have Alicia Gray. They have other good players. It's not a one-woman show. But when you do have one of the top, maybe 5, definitely 10, but Rhyne Howard might be a top 5 player in the league right now. When you have that, you're going to have a chance come playoff time. Yeah,
she
I'm
might
like,
be
right?
top 5.
That's why I'm like, if
we're talking Asia Wilson and Breonna Stewart are there,
right,
obviously.
Yeah,
of course. And we're not basing it on this season, so we're just going like the 5 best players in the league.
5 best right now. Yeah, I mean,
I would say when healthy, I think Elena Delle Donne and Nneka Ogwumike deserve the credit to be in the top 5.
They do.
Yeah, I mean, she's in the mix. Like, there's a logjam there for that 5th spot.
Yeah, like, I mean,
she's been top 5 this season for sure.
This season, she's definitely top. That's what I was gonna say, because this season Rhyne Howard is over Elena and over.
Yes.
I mean, she right this season Rhyne Howard is top 5 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If we're just talking like top 5,
if we're talking overall, she's definitely in the top 10.
She's definitely top 10.
There are not 10 players in the WNBA better than Rhyne Howard. There's not. There's just not. Like, you have your Asia Wilsons, you have your Breonna Stewarts, right? You have your Elena Delle Donnes and your Nneka Ogwumikes when they're healthy. We can give credit to Brittany for BG when she's healthy, and then there's Jewel Lloyd
might be in there.
And Arike. I would say those are the 7 for sure that are undeniable. Yeah. Those last 3 spots, like, do what you want with them. And I think Rhyne Howard, so far through a season and a half of being in the WNBA, has made a strong case to be top 10. I can't name 10 players I would say without question are better. I can name 7 for sure that are without question better, but after those top 7, she's in. Like, you put her in top 10, that's your business. Like, can't get mad at you for that. Can't get mad at you for that. I would first of all, I love the mention of Alicia Gray, but I think the other person that's been super important is the other all-star of the team, Cheyenne Parker, who's an 8-year vet, and she's been an all-star this year. Like, she has had not even arguably, like, she's had the best season of her career so far in year 8. In her 3rd year in Atlanta with a lot of young talent. Like, she's been the vet, and she's been able to, like, she's averaging 14 points per game this season, shooting 48% from the field, and she's shooting 86% from the line. Like, and she's doing a bit of everything. Like, she's averaging a block and a half. She's got 7 boards. Like, she's been super critical when you talk about being able to play off of Rhyne Howard, when you talk about being able to play off of Alicia Gray, when you even talk about being to play off of someone the likes of an Ari McDonald. Like, that's what she brings to the table. And I think when you look at, this is not a super team by any means. And we'll talk about super teams later. But if you're just ranking trios, when you're talking about Rhyne Howard, Alicia Gray, and Cheyenne Parker, I don't know. I'll go on record and say that's a top 5 trio in the league right now.
Yeah,
I can't name 5. I can't name 5 trios. Like, you have, of course, you've got the big 3 in New York. That's top 5 easy. Jones, Stewie, and Sab, top 5 trio easy. Whichever 3 players you want to pick from the starting 5 of the Aces, because they're all so dynamic, is the top 5 trio. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say, because of her most recent play, I would say that Natasha Howard, Satu Sabali, and Arike Agubawale are a top 5 trio in the WNBA today.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 that I would say definitively are better. Again, once you get past those 3, you'd have to put these 3 in here in Atlanta at that 4th spot at least. Because if you, let's say you take it to DC, like, it's Natasha Cloud and Elena Delle Donne, but, like, who's the 3rd? And whoever you put in, let's say it's Shakira Austin, are the 3 of them better? I wouldn't say so. I'd say they're in the same category at least, but better? No.
Right.
Let's take it to Chicago. Unfortunately, No,
Yeah,
if Candace Parker and Sloot were still there, then you could say so. But it's just Kalia Copper right now, so I wouldn't say so. I love what Diamond Miller is doing, and I love what Fessa has been doing, but I don't think they have a third player out there right now that you can say is going to be that would make that trio better. So I can't go there. The Jewel Lloyd and Seattle, they're in the same situation as Kalia Copper and the Sky. Like there's not two players that I would say comfortably you could put up there with Lloyd to be better than the three they had. So it's a top 5 trio in basketball. And when you have a top 5 trio with a top 10 player, you're going to give opposing teams nightmares, especially when it comes to the postseason, especially when your best player causes so many matchup problems, not just from a one-on-one standpoint, but from literally your defense schematically has to change. If you want to stop Rhyne Howard, you have to put a big, whether it's a wing, a 4, or your 5 on Rhyne Howard to stop her. And if you do that, that leaves your paint vulnerable. Alicia Gray knows that. Cheyenne Parker knows that. And everyone else in Atlanta knows that. And they utilize that to their advantage, so much so that they're the 5th best team or record-wise in the WNBA today. They could make some noise. They could get out of the first round, I think.
Yeah, for sure. No question. They're going to be in, and anything's up for grabs. It's really going to be on, not to keep stressing because it's not a one woman effort, but Rhyne Howard is going to have to be special. Like if she has a special, the biggest nightmare that Atlanta can give any team is if Rhyne Howard goes into special mode in the playoffs. And let's not scoff over. I keep forgetting they have Ari McDonald off the bench. I saw she had a double-digit scoring game off the bench sometime recently. If they give her empowerment and she gets loose and active, watch out. You know, she's still young in the league, of course, but if they have that kind of spark plug off the bench, then really watch out for Atlanta.
If the playoffs ended today, their first round series will be against the Washington Mystics. Very favorable series for them. And I love the Mystics, but that's a winnable series for the Atlanta Dream. If that's their first, if things hold as they are, that would be their first round matchup. And I think they would do, I think they'd be okay. Or no, their first round matchup would be against the Wings, actually, not the Mystics, which would also be very interesting to see those two top 5 trios go head to head. Again, really quickly, before we keep it going, please, everybody, make sure you're heading over to YouTube if you haven't already. Leave a like, drop a subscription so that you don't miss any future episodes of Go Talk Marcus or anything else on the network. Also, head over to the listening platforms wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe. Leave a 5-star review and a like for the Give Us a Shot Network. You can find every episode we have of every podcast on the network on there. So please, please, please make sure you check that out. Martin, you know me, man, and I know you, and we're all about giving out flowers. The one award I think we haven't really talked about, there's a couple we haven't talked about. Coach of the Year is one of them. But the one award that we kind of haven't talked about at all, really, at all this season is Most Improved. So let's do that. If you have to look at this season so far, who would you, if you had a vote, who would get your vote as the most improved player in the W so far this season?
I think I would go with Nafessa in Minnesota. I know it's probably not a popular most improved pick just because like she was out last year giving birth. And the year before that, she averaged like 16 and 6. Like she was a good player. But I mean, if you just compare this season to her last full season 2 years ago, she has still drastically improved from that. And I would even say, I mean, I would give her points for being as good as she is coming off of a year, coming off of maternity leave. I think that should probably count towards most improved. I mean, for her to come back,
it's a criteria that's unique. It's criteria that's unique to the WNBA. Yeah, I'd say so.
I know there's not comeback player of the year, but that's basically what it is. She played with 4 games last year. She's averaging 21 and 7. I mean, she's been dominant this year, not just good, but dominant. So I think that's where my vote and my flowers would be going because she's just been so dominant individually and coming off of a maternity year. That's super impressive to me.
And she has been in the MVP conversation. So there's definitely some warranted there. I'm going to go to someone else that's been in the MVP conversation that I think she doesn't have the maternity leave ammunition in her back pocket, but she's been playing great. We talked about her a lot this season. If I had a vote, my most improved player would be Satu Sabi.
Okay.
She's averaging 18 this season. Now, granted, she spent each of her last 3 seasons prior dealing with injury. She hasn't played more than 17 games in her career. She's played, if I'm not mistaken, every game the Wings have played so far this season. And she's been playing MVP caliber basketball. Now, and we'll talk about this in a moment, when you have players like Asia Wilson and Breonna Stewart, it's tough to beat them out for it because they're also playing at super high level of basketball. But Satou Sabally set the record, if I'm not mistaken, for the most consecutive double-doubles to start off a season. I believe she had 11 or 12. And she is still on pace to average a double-double so far this season. She's averaging 18 and 9 right now, so she's got to pick up her rebounding numbers just a bit. But she's not just shooting at 18 and 9, which are both career highs. She's got career highs across the board. She's attempting more shots per game. She's making more shots per game. She's hitting her shots at the highest clip per game. She's hitting threes at the highest clip she's had per game. Her free throws aren't the highest. It's 87. Last year, she shot 91, but she only played 11 games last year. So in a full season, she's averaging 88% from the free throw line, which would be a career high. Most rebounds ever, most assists ever, most steals ever at a steal and a half per game. And her turnover ratio, it's gone up a bit because she's been handling the ball more, but she's been doing everything better. It's been a career year for her. Her box plus minus, which is a stat I don't even care that much about, but that's the highest it's ever been in her career as well. When you look at Satou Sabally, the one thing, I've been beating this drum, and you've been here every time, the one thing I've consistently said about Satou is she is a unicorn. And what separates her and what makes her so special is she is one of very few legit second options that on any given night can be the first option for her basketball team. And she benefits from the fact that because Arike Ogunbowale is so prolific and so phenomenal, and she really has those off nights, that Satou is almost crazy enough forgotten defensively by the other team, which is something you can't do because she does so much, because of her length, because she is versatile, because she can push the floor offensively in transition. The way she works in the open floor, whether it's as the ball handler or an off the ball, is phenomenal, and it is second to none. Satou Sabally, if I had a vote for most improved player, she would get my vote.
I think she's going to win. I think she's going to win it. I think she should be the favorite to win it. She probably is most people's favorite, and she probably should be.
She's been playing great. I think it's a two-woman race. It's either going to be Fessa or it's going to be Satou. I think the one thing that we look at and we say with Satou, and we've talked about this as well, is, but we always knew Satou could do this. Doesn't matter that we always knew she could do this.
Right.
The fact is, when you look at her production the past 3 seasons because of injury, and you look at what she's been able to do now that she's fully healthy, she's the most improved player. Statistically, she's the best season of her career.
I'm not going to lie. After those two, because I think we probably are naming the top 2. I wouldn't be mad at Jackie Young winning again. She's the way she's played, she could win it again.
She's improved again.
She keeps improving more. Like her jump from 2 years ago to last year is probably about the same, if not more. She may have made more of a jump from last year to this year.
Her jump. So if we look at her stats she was named most improved player last year, and she did that improving her point totals by 3.7 points per game. Her field goal percentage dropped a bit. Her free throw percentage skyrocketed from 25% to 43% last year, and her free throws jumped up by 2%. From last season as most improved to this season, her point per game production on a super team has gone up again by 3 points. Her field goal percentage is the highest it's been her entire career. Her 3-point percentage is the highest it's been her entire career. Her free throw percentage has taken a hit a bit. She's hitting about the same at rebounds. She's hitting about the same at assists. She's hitting about the same at steals as pertains to last season. And her box plus minus, which again is a stat I don't really care about, but it's the highest it's ever been in her career. The one thing I think, and it's unfortunate, they probably won't give it to Jackie Young because she was most improved last season.
Yeah.
But she's improved more from last season to this season than she did from 2021 to 2022. So she should be in the conversation 100%.
Should be in the conversation. Absolutely.
And she was also, just like Satou, just like Fessa, at one point in this season, as you mentioned, an MVP candidate.
MVP conversation, for sure. Yeah.
Let's stay giving out flowers because we love giving out flowers. Let's go from most improved. Let's just talk about, we see those tweets a lot of like players that are super duper talented but get no recognition at all. Who's the one player that you think is super underappreciated and doesn't get the respect that she deserves?
That's a good question. I mean, I know I talked about it before, but I still feel like people don't recognize or acknowledge how great Kelsey Plum is. I think all the aces. I think it's hard to get caught up in super team and stuff, which we're going to talk about, but you can't gloss over like the great individual talent that you're seeing. I mean, the only reason it's a super team is because the individuals are super. So like appreciate that. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like Kelsey Plum, someone suggested this to me, like, are the aces gonna force the league's hand? And like someone suggested to me, was it? I don't know if it was you or not. I don't think it was you. Someone said they should split them up and like send Jackie Young one place where she'll be.
No, I didn't say that. I'm an Aces fan. I wouldn't want that to happen.
Where she'll be the number one. Like start, like split them up and put like start an expansion, a new team in Charlotte again. Make Kelsey Plum the lead guard on that team. Like let's split them up. Like someone suggested to me, like this may end up bad for the league soon. And they just keep running the table and let's split them up. But like they're all that good individually. That I feel like we don't take time. Like every time Chelsea Gray throws a crazy behind the back pass, we all love to marvel over it. But it's like, yo, that's what these individuals are OD. And I still don't think enough people are talking about Kelsey Plum enough and how great she is.
Yeah. I'm gonna go
also sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Maureen Johannes, she's just one of my favorite players.
Yeah.
One of the most dynamic, exciting players. If you know, she comes off the bench for the Liberty and she is straight sauce, all sauce. No, nothing mild, no seasoning. All her bag has seasoning, drip, and sauce in it. One more name I'll say, one of my favorite players in the league, Brittany Sykes. You talked about who that big three.
We've talked about Brittany before.
It has to be Brittany. To me, it has to be. When I watch her play, she is the difference, bro. She plays a different game out there. She's tough. She's strong. She shoots it. She's got a bag. She's got handles. She's shifty. Like she's got kind of everything you would want. Brittany, she's one of my favorite players. Brittany Sykes. We definitely need to hear more about her. I'm giving her flowers.
So I have 3 players. They all play for the same team. That's because this team, I think, overall is underappreciated. Let's start with Dwyane Bonner. She's incredible. And I don't think Dwyane Bonner gets enough credit. She set a career high earlier this year against my Aces, handing them their first loss. If I'm not mistaken, she dropped 40-some-odd points in that game. She was incredible. Set a franchise record. What she brings to the table as a vet, she's been around for a while. She's been in the league. This is what her 13th or 14th season, I believe, and she's been doing incredible. And I think statistically, even though she averaged more points in 2020, from an efficiency standpoint, this is the best season she's had in a very long time. She's averaging about 19 points a game, which is her most since 2020. But again, her efficiency this season is better than in 2020. So like you could argue this is her best season since she averaged 21 points per game for Phoenix in 2012. It's been a decade. Not saying she had bad seasons in the last 11 seasons, but this season specifically, what she's brought to the table, we talked about as one of the very first episodes we did this season about who was going to fill that gap for Jonquel Jones, and Dwyane Bonner has done that. She's done that so seamlessly, and it's been an amazing thing to watch. The other player that I think is super underappreciated, and we talked about her on the show a couple times, is her partner, Alyssa Thomas, who they just recently got engaged. Shout out to them. Like, she's also super incredible, and we talked about how she's the Draymond Green of the WNBA because she can do it all. She can give you the triple-double, like now, but she can score, which makes her better. But like, she's a reliable scoring threat. She can play defense. She can dish out the ball offensively. She can crash the boards. And she is the engine and she is the motor of the Connecticut Sun. And she doesn't really get a lot of credit. And I think she deserves it because, again, when you talk about filling the space, that gaping hole that Jonquel Jones left, all Alyssa Thomas and Dwyane Bonner have been able to do is elevate their games to help fill that hole. The last one, I think, is super underappreciated. I would argue she's the best bench player in the league. That's just my personal bias. Dejanay Carrington. She's the heart and soul of this team off the bench. She's a 3-and-D like no one else. If Connecticut needs buckets off the bench, she got you. If Connecticut needs defense off the bench, she got you. Like if Connecticut needs someone to go out there and just take a charge to get some life back into the arena, some life back into the team, she got you. And she does it so very well. It's not about, and she does all the little things that don't show up on the box. Like it's not just about the steals and the points and the rebounds and the assists. It's also about the deflections. It's also about the screens that she sets. It's also about the charges that she takes or the fouls that she's forcing or pushing it in transition. Like she does so many of the little things that go so underappreciated that sometimes when you look up, she can go on an 8-0, 10-0, 12-0 run by herself because she is that energy. And the next thing you know, you look up and you went from being up 15 points to being down 7. Like that is who she is. When Connecticut's really in a rut and they really need some offensive oomph, some energy, they put Dejanay Carrington in the game. So all 3 of those, I know they're all on the same team, but all 3 of those players for me, I think, are super underappreciated and they all deserve their flowers. And the Connecticut Sun as a whole, like we could talk about Natisha Heidemann, like we could talk about Brianna Jones, who unfortunately got hurt and we won't see her the rest of the year. Like we go down, that entire roster is super underappreciated. But those 3 specifically, I think, for this season, how they played this season especially, deserve more flowers and deserve more recognition than what they've gotten so far this season.
That's a good list.
Bro, the Sun, man. Like, who would have thought, right? Let's just talk about it. Like, who would have thought the Sun? They're ranked 3rd in the league. They're the 3rd best. Like, and again, I know we've talked about this before. Like, I know that they were in the finals last season. Like, they lost Jonquel Jones. They lost Kurt Miller. But they're 18-6.
Yeah.
18-6. And they've got the 3rd best record. They're half a game behind New York for 1st in the Eastern Conference. And they've handed the Aces a loss. And they've played every team hard. They are the reason they've forced the Mystics out of contention, if we're being honest, because they've done the Mystics bad, unfortunately, in the games that they've played defensively. They've handed the Liberty some tough losses. They've risen to the occasion every single time, and they've been doing so under the radar and quietly. The Connecticut Sun as a whole are underappreciated, I would say.
Yep. Good players, good culture.
Absolutely. Listen, people, please stay tuned because there are still 2 more things we have to talk about, including that major announcement. But if you have not already and you're just joining us, make sure you stop what you're doing, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, head over to the Facebook, follow there, head over to Instagram, follow there, give us a shot network on everything. Head over to wherever you get your podcast so you can listen to the audio as well. There's a lot happening. And like I said, stay tuned because in just a couple of moments, Martin and I are going to make a major announcement about the future of the network. So stay tuned for that. Martin, Twitter was in an uproar this past weekend. And that's nothing new because Twitter is always in an uproar. But if there's one thing that I think you and I can both agree on about the world of women's basketball, is that Twitter does not play about A'ja Wilson. Twitter does not take kindly to A'ja Wilson disrespect or perceived A'ja Wilson disrespect. Let me get you all up to speed. I don't know who did it because I didn't see it. Someone listed their MVP ladder, and A'ja Wilson was not on it. And Twitter was not happy about it one bit. Not just Aces fans, but the entire WNBA community was not happy about A'ja Wilson being left off of that particular network's WNBA MVP ladder. So before we jump into A'ja Wilson, which is also going to lead to us talking about Breanna Stewart, because that's always the discussion, let's talk a bit about super team bias. Because you look at Breanna Stewart, people put Breanna Stewart in the MVP conversation, despite the New York Liberty obviously being a super team. But there's a lot of people that are hesitant to put A'ja Wilson in the MVP conversation because the Aces are a super team. So I want to ask you this first, because this is something I don't think anyone wants to do. So let's do it. Let's have the tough conversation. What does it mean to be the MVP? Let's get a clear-cut definition of who the most valuable player is, because there's some people who think it's the best player on the best team. Yeah. For some players and for some sports, it's whoever had the best narrative. For some people, it's whoever has the best season. For some people, it's, for example, I'll throw this out there. For some people, you look at an Alyssa Thomas or DeWanna Bonner, and you say they're the MVP because of what they mean to the Sun. Or you look at a Rhyne Howard and you say Rhyne Howard should be in the MVP conversation because what would the dream be without them? Or, and I've even thrown this argument out there, you look at someone like Jewel Lloyd who doesn't have the wins,
right? But
the Storm would probably be winless without Jewel Lloyd. So let's get a definition. If you are the MVP of the league, not just the WNBA, but of any league, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, historically, at least in basketball, can't speak for other sports, but in NBA, WNBA, I've definitely grown accustomed to the standard of best player on the best team. That's why Jokic won MVP, Embiid won it this past year, right? Now, that was an example of And I think it's comparable to Asia and Stewie. Jokic was on the better team.
Mhm.
Denver Nuggets were a 1 seed. Philly wasn't a 1 seed, right?
No.
Philly wasn't one of the
No.
top teams in the East, right? They were
They
top
were third or
3
fourth,
at
I
one
believe.
point, top 4, top 5, whatever, but they weren't. Denver was a 1 seed.
Yeah.
The main reason why Embiid won MVP over Jokic was because he was just more dominant than him. So as long as your team still has to be good. So again, I'm accustomed to best player on the best team, but it doesn't always shake out exactly that way. But
Sure.
what do we know? You have to be dominant and your team also has to be good. So the whole thing about like, well, the argument like some people like to say about, well, the Aces would still be really good without Asia. Atlanta wouldn't be as good without Rhyne Howard. To me, that doesn't make Rhyne Howard more of a candidate for MVP. That it just historically, that's not, we don't go by how would that team be if they weren't on it. It's not that. That's not the metric we use at all. Is your team successful, and how dominant are you in relation to your team being successful? That's basically what it comes down to. So I say Jokic and Embiid is comparable to what we have in Stewie and Asia this season, because right now Asia's on the better team, one of the best teams ever, literally. Asia's still dominating. She's having some more 2010 games. Her numbers are going up. Candace Parker is hurt right now, so I think that might actually boost her numbers a bit and kind of boost her MVP stock a little bit, because she might have to put up some more numbers. But Stewie is actually having the more dominant individual season than Asia. So I understand having Stewie as your as someone's number one pick on the ladder. I get it. The Liberty are playing well. They've got a good record. They're one of the top teams in the East. And Stewie has been very dominant, more dominant individually than Asia has. So I get it. But that's kind of where I am with it. It's just like, it's as simple as you have to be dominant and your team has to be either dominant or just like really good, one of the best teams. It basically comes down to that at this point.
So I agree. Let's compare the seasons that Asia Wilson and Breanna Stewart have had so far this season. When you look at what Breanna Stewart has done this year, we are talking about a phenomenal season for Breanna Stewart. First of all, she's given us a 40-point game this season. She's given us multiple double-doubles this season, and she's playing great basketball. There's no doubt about it. Asia Wilson is also playing great basketball. So far this season, Breanna Stewart has the edge in points. She's averaging 23 points per game. Asia Wilson's averaging 20 points per game. Asia's averaging 9.4 boards per game. Breanna Stewart averaging 9. I'm sorry, Asia's averaging 9.5. Breanna's averaging 9.4. So comparable there. Breanna Stewart is averaging more assists per game, 3.7 to Asia's 2.1. She's also averaging more steals by a tenth, 1.4 to 1.3. But Asia Wilson's averaging 2 blocks per game. And Breanna Stewart's averaging 1 block per game. Asia Wilson is the more efficient from the field at 56% to Breanna Stewart's 48%. Breanna Stewart has shot better from 3, but at 40% compared to Asia's 24, if you round. And she's also the better free throw shooter, 86% to Asia's 78. The effective field goal percentage for both ladies goes Asia Wilson's way, 56% to Breanna Stewart's 54%. And I think it is important to note that in their lone head-to-head game so far, Asia Wilson and the Aces did defeat Breanna Stewart and the New York Liberty. So it's pretty neck and neck. And you and I have kind of had this conversation, and I'm going to take my bias out of it as an Aces fan, and I'm going to give you the objective stats. Asia Wilson was the MVP last season. Asia Wilson last season, as the MVP, averaged 19 points on 50, 37, and 81 splits with 9 boards, a steal, and almost 2 blocks. This season, with a super team,
Right,
Asia Wilson is averaging, if we round, 21 points per game on 56% shooting, 24% from 3, 78% from the line, 9 boards, a steal, 2 blocks. So the MVP season that she posted last season, she's playing better. This is actually statistically the best season we've seen Asia Wilson play her entire career. It's on pace for that.
Yeah.
We're on pace for the best season A'ja Wilson has played, and she's a 2-time MVP. So she's currently outplaying her former 2 MVP seasons. When I look at it from that perspective, when you also throw into the fact that we've talked about this before, that this isn't just about the offensive side of the basketball when you're looking at A'ja Wilson being MVP. Because A'ja Wilson isn't just in the running and at the front of the race for MVP. A'ja Wilson's the defensive player of the year this year, bar none. There's no one else in basketball defensively that's doing what A'ja Wilson is doing defensively. No one.
Right.
There's nobody. There is no person that you can name so far this season that holds a candle to what A'ja Wilson has brought to the floor defensively. And it's not just the 2 blocks per game, and it's not just the nearly 1.5 steals per game. It's the fact that she is the defensive anchor.
Yeah.
Martin earlier talked about how the Aces are on pace to be the best team in basketball in the history of the league. Let's throw some context in that. If the Aces win every game the rest of the way, they have the highest winning percentage in the history of the league. If they lose just one more game, they will tie the Houston Comets from way back when for the highest winning percentage ever at 90%. I'm about to say the A'ja Wilsons. The Las Vegas Aces are on pace to have the highest offensive rating in the history of basketball. They're also on pace to have the highest defensive rating in the history of basketball. They're on pace to have the highest margin of victory on a per game basis and an overall basis in the history of the league. So if your argument is that the Aces are a playoff team without A'ja Wilson, then my counterpoint to you is that the New York Liberty are a playoff team without Breanna Stewart, as long as they still have Jonquel Jones and Vanderson, of course.
Yeah.
That is what I would say.
Yeah.
So
it's a
for
fact.
me,
It's still a really good team. They both have
still a
really
good
good
team.
teams without them. So that kind of cancels out.
So for me, the differentiating factor between who the MVP is, because they're both lethal offensively, is, well, who's more valuable defensively? It's A'ja Wilson.
There's no debate. And there's no debate there.
So for me, for the second consecutive season, I don't know if this has ever been done before, we can stat check it, A'ja Wilson's going to win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year for the second year in a row.
Damn. She won both last year, too? She won MVP
She won
and
both
last year?
She won both last year.
Might get both, yeah.
So the Defensive Player of the Year, we can put her name on it already and give it to her.
Yeah, I think that's in the bag.
That's a lot. The argument is MVP. And for me, because she's the Defensive Player of the Year again, she has to be the MVP.
Almost has to be MVP.
She has to be.
You almost can't give her one without the other.
You can't.
I mean, well, you could give her MVP. No, like you can't not give her Defensive Player of the Year.
No.
Like it's almost like by giving her Defensive Player of the Year, you have to give her MVP. You can't.
So,
you can't.
Right.
And I could see them trying to give her Defensive Player of the Year as and give Stewie MVP. But I told you last time I was on, I think Stewie needs to have like 240 balls to close. Like I think she needs to go crazy to like win MVP because the Liberty need to go on a run. They need to be winning, And I'm not gonna lie. That game isn't it the Commissioner's Cup Championship or however they do it? The Liberty
August 15th. It's the Commissioner's Cup Finals. Yep.
That game might decide who's MVP.
And I was going to say that. So
didn't that happen with Jokic and Embiid?
I was just going to say that. You mentioned
Jokic
and Embiid. Yep.
It might come down to that. It might literally come down to that game.
You mentioned Jokic and Embiid. Jokic and Embiid, they played the Sixers and the Nuggets because they're in opposing conferences. They played twice this season.
Yeah.
The first game that Jokic and Embiid played against each other, Embiid mopped the floor with Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
And it was during that stretch when he was averaging like 30 and 14 or whatever he was averaging, and he was going crazy. And people made a big deal about the fact that when it was time to play him again, Embiid was hurt and he didn't play.
Right.
Man, when you dropped 54 on cuz, no matter what happens here.
I did my job already.
No matter.
I think that got an MVP.
That's what I would say. It's not just if the Aces win, because they're the better team, so they probably will.
Right.
If the Aces win on August 15th in the Commissioner Cup Championship and A'ja Wilson outplays Breanna Stewart, just like she outplayed Breanna Stewart the first time around, give me then the argument. Give me the Breanna Stewart argument for MVP. There won't be one.
If that happens,
there won't be one.
A'ja Wilson is the MVP. There won't be one.
There won't be one.
I'm sorry.
The Aces can collapse the rest of the way. There won't be one.
Right.
And I'm not saying that to sound crazy, but again, so of course we can live in a world where the MVP is not the defensive player of the year. We can live in a world where the defensive player of the year is not the MVP. It happens all the time.
Sure.
But what I'm presenting to you all as a train of thought is, if last season A'ja Wilson was the best player in basketball and the best defensive player in basketball, and she won both awards, and she's playing better this season than she did last season, with Jackie Young having a career season, and Chelsea Gray having a career season, and Kelsey Plum having a career season, and she's still the best player on this team with Candace Parker, and she's also having a career season offensively. And on top of that, she's playing better defensively than she did last season. She was defensive player of the year. What I'm saying to you is that the difference now has to be who's the better player defensively, because that's the difference.
Right.
And A'ja Wilson's the better defensive player. A'ja Wilson, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time in the history of the WNBA, will win back-to-back in WNBA and Defensive Player of the Years. I don't think, and I'll be honest, it's off the top of my head. I could be wrong. I don't think anyone in the NBA has done that either.
I don't think so.
I know like Jordan has won MVP and DPOY in several seasons, but I don't think he did it back to back.
I don't think so.
I don't think there's no one in the history, and you guys can check. And I'm not saying that to like bolster A'ja. I'm saying that because I genuinely don't know.
I really don't know.
Off the top of my head, in the 75+ year history of the NBA and in the 27-year history of the WNBA, I do not believe there's a player in either league that has won back-to-back MVPs, like an MVP and a Defensive Player of the Year one season, and then came right back and did it the exact same season. I don't think that's ever happened before. And if that happens this season, and we're going to get onto a tangent here, but if that happens this season, we need to start talking about A'ja Wilson the same way we talk about Lisa Leslie and Cheryl Swoops and Tamika Catchings and Candace Parker. It's not just one of the all-time greatest big girls in the league, but is one of the greatest players to ever step foot on a basketball court for the Women's National Basketball Association. And the cherry on top of all that is, she's 26. She's 26. Which means she still has at least another 5 to 7 years. 5 to 8 years of basketball. She's got at least another 3 to 5 in her prime. When it is all said and done, A'ja Wilson might be the greatest to ever do it.
Right. She's going
and
for.
It starts with winning MVP and Defensive Player of the Year again, because she should.
Yep. Because
she should. So, before we jump into this announcement, please make sure you guys are liking, you guys are subscribing, you guys are commenting, leaving 5-star reviews on everything. Because, as Jordan would say, we trying to win awards out here in these streets, but also because we work hard to put this content out for you. And if you guys appreciate it, we want to know that so we continue to put out all this great content. So, Martin, would you like to do the honors, or do you want?
You go ahead. You go ahead, and I'll follow up. I'll jump in.
So, as you guys know, I'll start this way. For those of you guys that really know me on a personal level, you guys know that covering the WNBA is something that I have been wanting to do on Go Talk with Marcus since I started, but I could never really figure it out. And about a year and some change ago, Jessica Brown, who is the president and CEO and founder of the Great College Girl Foundation, sent me a text telling me that I had to talk to her friend Martin Soaries, because he was this great basketball mind and he did a lot of great things with basketball, and it'd be really helpful for me. Martin's been on the show a couple of times before the network, and now since I've joined the network, we've done a lot of content together. Martin, first of all, is great at what he does. And he and I have always tried to figure out ways that we can continue to build our working relationship and continue to put out content together. And we have figured out a way to do that in a way that is going to further, we hope, is going to help further the game of women's basketball. Martin has a show already that exists. It's called Protect Our Queens. And Martin can go into a little bit more depth about why he started Protect Our Queens and what. I'm not just saying this on camera, because I've said this to Martin several times. And if I really cared enough to prove it to you guys, I'd pull up the voice messages that we have where I said it. It is truly an honor and a privilege to embark on this journey with Martin in the world of women's basketball, but specifically with Protect Our Queens, because this is Martin's baby. So before Martin kind of goes into what Protect Our Queens is and what we'll be doing with the show, Martin and I are both pleased to announce that starting September 12th, which is the day before the WNBA playoffs begin, Protect Our Queens podcast will join the Give Us a Shot network. And again, like I said, Martin will go into more depth about what that means and what that's going to look like. This is something that we've been working on for a while. It is a project that Martin has started, and it is something that just fits right now, not just for Martin, but for myself. And so, Martin, my man, you go ahead and you take it away and you tell them what to expect from Protect Our Queens.
Yeah, so Protect Our Queens did start with me on Basketball Society, and I started it as a branch of the brand as a special segment where we use that to specifically cover and highlight women's basketball. So I started by doing some videos. We did some interviews with some of the top high school basketball players in New Jersey. We've had Diamond Miller on, Olivia Miles, all kinds of some of the top players in the country we would have on and interview them. I did a special feature on a couple of players. Hannah Hidalgo was one. She's a frequent Protect Our Queens person. She's been on my podcast. She's obviously a highly touted prospect that's going to be at Notre Dame in the fall. So I did a feature on her. That was during the pandemic when things were shut down and high school seasons were shortened. So there wasn't much media or even access at the time. They weren't letting fans into games at high school games and stuff. So for the girls' side, it was even more. I mean, there were hardly people at girls' games to begin with before the pandemic. So during the pandemic, it was even less access. But fortunately, I had a chance to go to all of Hannah's games that year. That was her sophomore year. So I spent time with her, went to almost every one of her games. It was a shortened season, so it was only about 15 games or so. Went to her house, spent time with her and her wonderful family, had church with them on Sundays and everything. But we did a feature on Hannah, did a couple other features on some top female prospects. And yeah, this is meant to be a platform, not just for men, but it's really important to me that a brother like my guy Marcus here and other guys who are interested in women's basketball, who are tapped into it, or who are not that tapped into it and kind of need a source or a platform to kind of put them on to girls that can play and that they want to know about before they get to, Louisville or Duke or LSU or the college level, where in a few years you see this girl killing in the Final Four and you're like, yo, who is this chick? Protect Our Queens. It's not just meant to put you on to upcoming talent. That's one of the many things we're going to be doing. But Protect Our Queens is meant to be a resource and a platform for people to really tap into how unique, how beautiful, and how special the women's basketball game is. As someone who is connected to the women's game, I have two sisters who played in the WNBA, who are all-time greats at Rutgers University. As someone who's been around the women's game, has come up around it, and who is just connected to it as much as I am. This is one of the few things that I am, for some reason, I have been called and chosen to help to contribute to this kind of work in the basketball world. So we are bringing the Protect Our Queens podcast. I'm talking to my camera now. I got to talk to my people.
He's talking to his camera.
He's not crazy. Protect Our Queens to the Give Us a Shot network. I know you've seen me tapped in. We've done the commercials. We've been dancing. We've been breaking stuff down. We've been talking to girls. We've been tapped in. Now is the time to really tap in, because we're bringing the Protect Our Queens podcast to the Give Us a Shot network. My brother, my guy, Mr. Dwyane Marcus, who I didn't know you had two first names. I thought your name was Marcus until recently. But now that we're tapped in and I'm getting to know this brother, we are going there into the abyss of women's basketball. I'm proud and happy and excited to have you along this journey with me for this next phase of Protect Our Queens. And the same energy holds true. Any of you who are talking about stay in the kitchen, who are in comments talking about lower the rims, or this is boring, or how much did you pay NBA players to watch women's basketball? You are on my list. You've been on my list. I've been coming out into the ring, knocking y'all out one by one, Royal Rumble style. I'm still here. And now I got my tag team partner. And trust me, Marcus is not to be trifled with. So trust me, the energy is staying the same. We're taking it to another level. We've got some live shows coming, some more interviews with some major people in the women's basketball space. This is what's going down now with Protect Our Queens. So stay tapped in with Give Us a Shot Network. Stay tapped in with me on Basketball Society. You'll still see me. You'll still see some Protect Our Queen stuff there. But the podcast is going to be right here on the Give Us a Shot Network, right here with my guy Marcus. So I am excited to get this movement, to continue the movement, and to get it started in this new phase.
So here's the crazy thing about life. I'm not that old. I haven't been living that long, but I think so. Martin and I after the first couple of NBA, when Martin first came on the show, we were doing NBA stuff. If you guys follow the show, you know one of Martin's first appearances, we were just doing a bunch of NBA stuff. Martin, after I think his fourth or fifth appearance on the show, was like, we got to figure out a way to do some content together. After a while, we kind of shifted the focus because I was like, this is the season I have to cover the WNBA with the high note that the college women's basketball season left off of. There was no excuse for me not to do the WNBA this season. And I had conversation with Germ. I had conversation with Ty about ways that I can still do the things I normally do, but move them in different places to be able to cover the game of women's basketball. This is not just about, as Martin mentioned, this isn't just about the WNBA. It's about college. It's about high school. Because the game of women's basketball is important. Now, I've said several times on this show that if you don't like that, then you're a Neanderthal and you don't love basketball, and we'll see you in September for football. Well, here's the thing. Now we're going to see you in September for women's basketball. So I really don't know what to tell you. I'm going to be here year-round covering women's basketball with my guy Martin Soaries, and I can't overstate the true privilege and honor I feel personally because of the personal connection that Martin has to the game of women's basketball with both of his sisters having played in the league. I have to thank Martin for entrusting me with this journey. I have to thank Miss Jessica Brown for even putting me in the path to be with Martin in the first place. And of course, I have to thank Germ and Ty and the Mighty Give Us a Shot Network for allowing me to create this show. We talk a lot in society about the importance of making space for the things you care about, and making sure that there are dedicated spaces where people can come and feel safe to do the things that they love. If you are a women's basketball fan, you no longer have to check out every other week an episode of Go Talk with Marcus to hear me and Martin talk about women's basketball, because we're going to be here on a weekly basis with guests, with a lot of fun things. This ain't just going to be a podcast, bro. It's going to be dynamic. We're going to have conversations that no one else wants to have. We're going to address some of them crazy things that people say about lowering the rim and people paying their players and all this other stuff. We're going to really get into the ins and outs of the games of women's basketball. We're gonna group some players in some certain places. We're gonna do the things that the things that Martin and I have planned for this show are not just for the rest of this season and they're not going to see us until next May. No. Protect Our Queens is going to exist from September 12th until Jesus cracks the sky open. I just want y'all to understand. It's not going anywhere. There's no break.
Yes,
Year round.
Yes, sir.
Till kingdom come. Literally. Till kingdom come. I don't have a camera I can talk off to, and I don't look at my webcam often, but like now I'm going to. Like we're here and we're here to stay. There is no more see you next year. No. See you next week. See you tomorrow. Like we're here. This is a dedicated effort, and it's not just, I don't want to give too much away, but like it's going to be dynamic, and it's going to be like unlike any other thing you've ever seen me do before, because I'm stepping out of my comfort zone a bit, but it's unlike anything I've ever done before. Martin, of the two of us, he's the historian. I'll be honest. I'm a fan of women's basketball, but I haven't been as tapped into women's basketball as I have been the past 2.5 years or so. So Martin's definitely the historian that can definitely take you back. But as Martin said, This is a formidable duo, and it is not one to be messed with when it
Well,
comes
it's
to this
good because
game of
we're
women's
both,
basketball.
we both want to offer people, like, we're not here to shove women's basketball down your throat. If you just don't like it, some people are just that dumb and ignorant, and they're gonna
And you're not a basketball fan if you don't, which we've said.
that's just the fact. That's what we're going to keep reminding people of, because there's no difference between women. It's basketball. We say women's basketball and men's basketball, but it's the common denominator is basketball. Like
it's basketball that just happened to be played by women. It's
playing
basketball.
the same sport, so it's a difference if you love basketball or if you love the NBA. Just make the distinction. Just know that it's fine. But we're not here to show. We're not here to convert you. I mean, we can if you're struggling that much, we'll help you. But we're only here for people who already like women's basketball, or for people like Marcus. Marcus may not know enough, but he made the decision, like, wait, I actually like this is actually a good product. I like basketball enough. Marcus started watching games and hitting me up like, yo, this is dope. Like, this girl is fire. This girl's game is dope. Like, he fell in love with it because he loves basketball. So a lot of people have that experience with women's basketball where they don't know what they don't know. They don't know that they actually, they haven't seen girls move. They don't know what these girls are doing nowadays. So that's part of what we want to do. Again, not even just at the WNBA level, but at different levels, where we'll try to introduce you to some girls all around the country, all around the world, that are playing basketball at a high level. Just to, again, not to shove it down your throats, but to kind of put you on to, like, really what's happening out here in women's and girls basketball. So it doesn't matter what level you're at, unless you are just completely in the dark and just you're okay with being stupid and naive and ignorant, and you can just stay there. We don't even have time for you. But if you are even the slightest bit curious, if you have even the slightest bit of interest and you don't really know where to go or who to tap in with or what to watch or listen to really get a feel for this thing, we're here for you. That's what this is for. We got you.
You're right here. Yeah. So a couple things I just want to clear the air, because I'm sure people are asking questions. Go Talk with Marcus isn't going anywhere. Go Talk with Marcus will still exist. I will still cover the NFL, the NBA, and the WWE with Go Talk with Marcus. Am I stretching myself too thin? My mom thinks so. And so do some of my friends. But I have no work-life balance, so it doesn't matter. Again, you make space for the things that you care about, and this is something that I care about. So Go Talk with Marcus is not going anywhere. There will be an official live episode. The official launch of Protect Our Queens is September 12th. But if you really think we're going to go a month and a half without talking women's basketball, you're crazy. So what we're going to say is just stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed to the network. Make sure you're following on all the socials. Follow me, GTP Marcus, on everything. Follow Martin at Martin Soaries at the Basketball Society on everything, because we'll be talking women's basketball. Just won't be on Go Talk with Marcus. Because just like NFL podcasts are for NFL fans, just like the NBA podcasts are for NBA fans, just like wrestling podcasts are for wrestling fans, fans of women's basketball deserve dedicated spaces to come and enjoy the game of women's basketball more than on a bi-weekly basis. And so to all the fans of women's basketball out there, what I'm going to say from the bottom of my heart is I apologize. I apologize for not figuring out a way to create a dedicated space to come talk about women's basketball sooner. And I hope that you guys can find it in your heart to forgive me. But now we found that place. September 12th. Be there right here on the Give Us a Shot Network YouTube channel.
Marcus,
peace
out,
bro. Bro.
Hey, I don't know how I give this up, bro.
Yeah.
You better not play with me. If I'm talking Protect Our Queens podcast, you know how I give it up. Come on now.
We're here. So I'm super. I'm not gonna say. I'll let Martin say what Martin said, because I have family that watch the show. I'm not gonna let them hear me say those words. But we're gonna. I'll say it the PG way. We're gonna shake some things up. Okay. Man, I don't.
September 12th, man. Y'all got a month and some change to get ready.
You have to get ready, or just be ready. You don't got to get ready. Stay ready. I don't know what to tell you. But it's coming. So the past couple of sign-offs for these women's basketball shows, I've been saying, if you don't like it, see you in September for football because you're a Neanderthal. Well, now I'm going to see you in September, and I'll still be talking women's basketball. So You all have a choice to make. Either you'll continue to be ignorant and you're just an NBA fan, or you'll embrace that little bit of curiosity in yourself and you'll want to come tap in and see what's happening in the great sport of women's basketball, because there's a lot of things to talk about, and we're going to talk about a lot of different conversations. I have a lot of conversations that not a lot of people have been willing to have on a platform such as Protect Our Queens. So one final time before we get up out of here, the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by the Give Us a Shot Network is officially debuting September 12th, Tuesday, September 12th, which is the night before the WNBA playoffs tip off. So be there for that. It will be a live episode. But again, just because the live episode is coming September 12th doesn't mean you have to wait until September 12th to get Protect Our Queens content. So make sure that you are liked up and subscribed, and you have post notifications turned on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. If you're on Threads too. Because anywhere that we can put the great sport of women's basketball presented by the Give Us a Shot Network by way of the Protect Our Queens podcast, we're going to do it. So follow Martin, follow myself, and follow the network, because it's about to go down. It's about to go down. So, for the great Martin Soaries of the Basketball Society and the new Protect Our Queens podcast, this is Marcus of Go Talk with Marcus and the new Protect Our Queens podcast, signing off. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next Saturday for a SummerSlam preview with my guy Sal Basalo. After that, I don't know when the next episode of Go Talk with Marcus is going to be, because, well, we got women's basketball to talk about. So, you guys enjoy the rest of your weekends, and of course, you guys enjoy the rest of your lives. And once again, we will see you September 12th live on YouTube for the debut episode of the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your lives.